everyone. Welcome, everyone, to the Cosmic Matrix podcast. Today with your host, Bernhard Guenther. And my very special guest today is Philip Shepherd. And I'm very excited to have Philip on the podcast. I've known Philip for a number of years and I've studied his work in depth and attended a few of his workshops. And before we go into it, I just want to share a little bit of Philip's bio directly from his webpage. Philip Shepherd is recognized as an international authority on embodiment. His unique techniques have been developed to transform our disconnected experience of self and world and are based on the vision articulated in his celebrated books, New Self, New World from 2010 and his recent book, Radical Wholeness, published in 2017. He developed the practices of TEPP, which is the embodiment present process, to help people reunite the thinking of the head with the deep, present, and calm intelligence of the body. Unlike the prevailing view of embodiment, which involves sitting in the head and listening to your body, Philip's approach helps you listen to the world through the body. Philip's personal path to understanding has been shaped by his adventures as a teenager when he cycled alone through Europe, the Middle East, India, and Japan, by his deep commitment to and studies of bodywork, by his experiences as an actor, playing lead roles on stages in London, New York, Chicago, and Toronto, and by the burning desire for freedom that has illuminated his entire life. He currently spends his time divided between teaching international workshops, running facilitator trainings, and participating in a documentary about his work. Philip is available for private coaching, weekend retreats, keynote talks, and facilitators trainings. And that's from his website, philipshepherd.com. Or is it .net?
.com,
exactly. So, exactly. Just couldn't remember. So, Philip, welcome.
Yeah, Bernhard, it's so good to see you. And yes, it's been some years.
It's been some years, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I also want to give credit to our mutual friend, Tim McClue, who introduced me to your work in a very pivotal moment. And it was almost like the saying goes, the teacher appears when the student is ready, or it was something I just desperately needed at that time in my life. And I was going through quite a hard time, in my personal life, relationship breakups, and, you know a little bit of my work can be a bit out there. So it can definitely get a bit head-centric, so to speak. And especially in this day and age, and we will talk about this as well, how the world keeps us in our heads. And I remember he sent me what you wrote many years ago, I believe in 2012, the Embodiment Manifesto. And it just, it's one of these things when I read it, it's like it struck such deep resonance of truth. I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what I need to engage and what I need to reconnect. And I've always been personally connected to my body. I'm a body worker, right? I talk about this yoga, body work, but the way you brought it, the whole point of embodiment, not attached to any tradition, right? But fusing almost mythology and science and together to a very approachable approach to get out of your head into your body. And the way you wrote the book as well, when afterwards I got the book New Self, New World. It's quite a, spiral in, spiral out approach. But I could tell when I read your work, and especially as the Body Manifesto, that it came from your own embodied experience, so you can always tell, like when you read somebody's work, where it's coming from. Like, is it just intellectual memorized knowledge, or somebody has truly embodied it and experienced it? And there's so many quotes. I keep quoting you in my articles on my Facebook. Your books are just, I have underlines all over, so it's hard to choose what to quote you from here at the podcast. But one quote that struck me the most in the Embodiment Manifesto was simply when you said or wrote, "Inhabiting your body, reuniting with its intelligence is one of the most potent political statements you can make." I'm like, boom. Because we are so externalizing always in our world, right? Trying to fix outside through our doing, through our acting, and so on and so forth. So, but before we have a couple of hours before we go deep into your work, I'm really curious, and maybe I'm sure our viewers and listeners as well, about your personal journey, because it's very fascinating how you went by yourself, cycled through Europe, the Middle East, India, and Japan. I want to hear about your personal experience on your path, which then resulted in your own work of embodiment?
Yeah, it goes back to my teenagehood and this deep, deep feeling that I was being duped by my culture. This feeling that they were asking me to buy into this set of values, this assumed hierarchy of ideas, this fantasy that I eventually identified as the fantasy of independence. So at the core of much of our society's imbalances and reactionism, where we react to things rather than integrate and respond to them, is our tenacious hold on this fantasy of independence. And you're told to become independent. You're told to stand on your own. There's the Declaration of Independence. And the one problem with that is that there is no example of independence anywhere in the universe. It is just a fantasy. Everything leans on everything. Everything affects everything at a scale we can't even possibly begin to imagine. So I could feel this fantasy having its talons in my culture, and my culture having its talons in me as a consequence. And I could feel myself being diminished. I could feel myself being uprooted from my source, from my truth, from what my body most deeply knew. So at a certain point, I faced a fork in the road because I'd been accepted to study physics at the University of Toronto. But I'd also seen a performance of Japanese no theater. So I'd been in theater for years. I loved theater, and I'd read the treatises of this Zeami Motokyo, who founded No Theater with his father. And these treatises illuminated my life. So I went to Montreal, like a 6-hour Greyhound bus ride, and got a place to sleep and went to the No play the next day. And it shook me to my core. I was disoriented and electrified by this performance without having any idea how it had achieved that effect on me. Because I could parse theater. I'd actually been to England and seen John Gielgud and Ralph Richardson and Alec Guinness. And, I'd seen just about the best that Western theater could offer and could parse it to some extent. Japanese no theater, I was lost. I was weeping and lost. That part of me that wants to understand how are they doing this? What's going on? And it wasn't until years later, a year and a bit later, when I left my culture, because I knew that if I remained, I would be subsumed. So forget university for now. Let's go to England and buy a bicycle and head off for Japan. And I honestly didn't fully expect to come back alive. Who knows, cycling alone through the Middle East? Who knows what's going to happen?
How old were you at that time?
I was 18.
18. And just real quick, going back, I wonder for our listeners, what is Japanese no theater?
Yeah, Japanese no theater is a 600-year-old form of theater. So it has not changed in 600 years. It is the most avant-garde theater you could ever see. There is no naturalism. It's stylized, and it has a restraint to it. It has an absolute disdain for pretending, for so when an old man is playing a young girl, he doesn't change his voice into something feminine. No, it's his voice, his fully embodied, natural voice speaking her lines, and it's behind a mask. So all the lead players wear masks, and it's dance, and it's music, and it's poetry, and it is the most stunning example of presence I have ever in my life encountered.
Oh,
So I bought my bike and headed off for Japan and went through such a grounding, such a communion with the world around me, and passed through so many different ways of understanding what it meant to be human. Like every culture represents what it is to be human in a different way. And that story of what it means to be human imbues a culture's language and architecture and customs and hierarchies. It's just every part of the culture aligns around this story. And I didn't face culture shock. I didn't feel culture shock until I'd come home. And then suddenly this world that was familiar to me in its merest detail was at the same time bizarre and arbitrary. So I'd gained the ability to question the assumptions that had been seeded into my neurology from the time I was an infant. I was able to haul them into the light and begin to question them.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main things, so I was baffled by no theater and the effect it had had on me. And it wasn't until I was there studying it that I learned of the Japanese concept of hara, which means belly. And I realized in no theater, every time the head turns and sees, it is turning from that place and seeing from that place. Every time an arm lifts, it is lifting from that place. And I had never seen such a thing in all my life growing up in the Western culture. So I got to the point where I could parse no theater, where I could begin to understand and come to terms with that. And it changed my life.
Mm. Well, it sounds very much, which I want to get into, that was your call to adventure, right?
Yeah.
Stepping into the unknown,
Yeah.
And
and I mean, it was a call, and it was into the unknown. I mean, it's not that I sat down with maps and plotted my route. If I get this far, then I'll find a map that'll take me there. And the 18-year-old in me said, if I get on my bike and I start pedaling and I don't stop and I'm heading in the right direction, I will get there.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, because nowadays, I mean, I almost say I don't want to shoot people because the head likes to shoot people, but every young boy, girl, whatever, should travel, right after school before deciding what they want to do with their lives at the age of 18, 19, which didn't work for me either, right? By the way, so for 2 years of work and then I dropped out. But I'm also interested. So through your own experiences, you realized, through very much influenced by Japanese Eastern culture and whatnot, how they're living more from their belly. There's more this embodied approach to life. Have there been any teachings, spiritual esoteric teachings, or anything that have also influenced your journey?
Many, many, many. I read Zen voraciously. I love Alan Watts. I will open to any spiritual teaching, knowing that there are currents of truth running through it, and that I love Thomas Merton, and then there are these Christian mystics, Meister Eckhart. So yes, but in the same way that I went to Japan to learn from no theater without ever in any way wishing to be a no actor. My premise was that there were principles animating that form that I needed to understand. And then my thought was I could bring those principles into the Western tradition and see where they took me. But I was never drawn to become a no theater or a Buddhist or a Sufi, or it was a grazing, it was a gathering, it was like holding something in your hand and wringing it. And if it thunked, I put it down. And if my being resonated to it, I took it and felt it and integrated it to the best of my ability.
So it's been something growing within you, very personal, and also applying in your very personal life and bringing it back, like the hero's return, so to speak.
Yeah, and dogma stands independent of the body. And there was something in me that always wanted to come back to the body. There was this center of my truth that I could feel. It's funny, I could feel it before I encountered no theater. This like deep in the pelvic bowl, it was almost like a sphere of stillness. And when I come back to that, it's my touchstone for truth. It's where I connect most profoundly with what matters to me in this moment. And questions facilitate that process, but I find answers tend to dull it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, because I remember what I like about your work, you always go also back to the etymology of words, the origin of words, right? That helped me, which I kind of got influenced by you and started, because it's so much truth, like we don't understand sometimes the original meaning of words we use, and they have so much significance. Even the word, like you mean, question relates to, or the word quest relates to a question, driven by a question, right? By the unknown. Wanting to know, and there's something, it goes beyond an intellectual infusion of knowledge, but striving for this inner experience of knowing, this embodied knowledge.
And a question, the most crucial questions that have come into my life have been born in the body. So the body feels, hold on, and it orients around that and finds a coherence that enables you to express the question in words. But it begins for me with that alertness of the body to something needs to be formulated, something needs to be brought into the field of your awareness and scrutinized in some way.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting, because you had all these experiences early in your life, as a teenager, then in your 20s, obviously. But then you worked as an actor and acting teacher. Is that correct? For many years. And like you said, you were just almost birthing your work, and I'm really fascinated when I read New Self, New World came out in 2020. I read it a few years later. And then we talked about when I went to some of your workshops, and it was quite a long process to write that book, many, many years, right? Because you let it marinate it came to birth. And I'm really curious how all of a sudden, you decided, it seemed almost like a download. You tuned into something and then it just came, but it also came in stages, so to speak. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I should go to the origin of the writing of the book. We were on holiday and I sort of decompressed for a couple of days and was awakened at 6 o'clock in the morning, which is not my normal time to be awake. And I was in a flash as wide awake as I've ever been in my life with the first line of this book in my head. And I sort of lay there in the dark, electrified by this. And, within half an hour, I sort of had a sense of the first chapter. And then, dawn was happening, and I was sort of feeling my way into the next two chapters. And so I started writing and spent the family holiday writing. So I was ambushed by it. It's not I sat down and decided, I think I should write a book. What should it be about? No, I was seized by the jugular, and it wouldn't let go. And there are people who've said, "Oh, it's just wonderful. You persevered for 10 years writing this book." It's like, no. It was more painful not to be writing it than to be writing it. And the writing was a joy. And I mean, you're absolutely right. I think of it in terms of fording a river. Like, you've got this river to cross. And I rewrote the book from scratch 4 times. And each time I wrote it, it was like that volume was like a stone in the river. And then I could step onto that and have a look around and find the next stone to place. And each new version was taking me closer and enabled me to write the next version. So I was on such a deep, patient, subtle journey of feeling my way across that river, of feeling my way into what matters most in my life, and also that fantasy that I was so close to being pulled into, to gain clarity for myself on the nature of that and what is happening in our culture, and how that is like a set of blinkers on our ability to ask questions and move ourselves forward.
Beautiful. Yeah, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, reading this book, I can really sense that energy. There's something else like coming through you, from a higher. It's not just quote unquote you in this little Philip Shepherd personality, something you tapped into but through your own calling, through your own, effort, that the response came, so to speak, and you let it marinate. That's what I mean. Like, the energy truly comes through, and it really, you take the reader on a journey. That's what I got out of this book, and it grabs you. And it's definitely not just coming from a head. It's definitely not coming from a place of ambition. Oh, I need to write a book to become an established author for my career and all of that, which we, see a lot in these days. So, but let's get into the book itself, because I'm sure like many readers, like, okay, what is it all about? What is embodiment? Listeners, new self, new world. Embodied. Can you give us a rundown, like a nutshell of what your work entails, the core principles of embodiment?
There are only complementary opposites dancing together that move us forward, that are the creative engine of whatever emerges. And one of those complementary opposites is male-female. Another is tyrant and hero. Body and world. They show up in so many ways. And the book does a couple of things. It talks about our culture in its historic journey from a place where in the early Neolithic, cultures were gathered around the mother. They felt the goddess of the earth and honored that relationship. They survived by noticing and feeling. As the Neolithic Revolution took hold and we discovered agriculture and we built permanent settlements and we domesticated animals, we went from feeling and noticing the world to needing to control it. And as our allegiance shifted, we moved from the earth and the mother and the goddess and the belly. So we in the early Neolithic experienced our thinking and our perceptions in the belly, and that shows up in art and it shows up in language. And our center of awareness literally began to rise through the body as our allegiance tipped to the gods in the sky, and the father in the family. And we ended up in our heads. So we've moved within the body from a place of our female consciousness, which resides in the pelvic bowl, to the pole of our male consciousness, which resides in the head. And the two bless each other. The two belong together. But then what happened was the male pole cut away from the female. It denied it, it demeaned it, it considered it trivial and unnecessary. As soon as the male comes out of relationship with the female, tyranny is born. And that tyranny is implicit in the first gesture of taking a seed from a plant and pushing it into the earth. As soon as you push that plant into the earth, suddenly the little green shoot growing up beside it is now a weed. And until that moment, a weed didn't exist. And the animal coming along is now vermin because it might eat your plant. Until now, vermin didn't exist. And the tree growing beside it has to be cut down because it's putting your plant into shade. And so that it's not that tyranny is inevitable with that, but it is implicit in that. And as our male consciousness cut off from the female, as the head dissociated from the intelligence of the body, our culture began to gather around the fantasies of the tyrant. And we atomize. We atomize our society. We atomize our bodies. The body then becomes a material thing, and it is separate from the world. And the thinking in the head is a material, separate thing that is dislocated from body and world both. And our whole experience of the self is one of a contracted factory of supervision. And when you dull yourself to the body, you dull yourself to the resonances of the world. And I really feel the body. There are many ways of speaking of the body, but I primarily feel it as a resonator, like a bell. It rings to the world, it rings to the present, it rings to every current that trembles through it. And through that resonance, you feel and know and commune with the world around you. Now, if your body is dulled to that, if you've consolidated it and stuffed it full of cotton balls, it has no resonance. So then the present ceases to exist for you as a source of guidance. It becomes yet another thing to manage. And then all you can do is guide yourself. All you can do is sit in your head and take charge and try to outthink your own life. And that's the condition into which we've slipped. So New Self, New World is a way of laying that out historically and culturally and psychologically, if you will, and spiritually as well.
So this body-mind split is also, mirrored in what you mentioned, the male-female split, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right.
And I just to say, I would never call it a body-mind split, because tacit in that description is the assumption that a body can be mindless.
Okay, it's like almost more the illusion of the body-mind split.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, right? Yeah. I mean, the only mindless body I've encountered has been in a morgue.
Very true.
So the body, right? The body teems with mind.
Right. We just disconnected, disassociated from it.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's just I'm a fanatic when it comes to such things. So to me, it's a mind-mind split. We are schizophrenic. Our minds are divided.
Interesting. Which also like that ties into what you just mentioned, because the key aspect of your world, which I remember we were talking to you and you really gave me a lot to think, because for me coming in the healing arts, yoga, qigong, which I practice, body work, I'm a body work, I give massages, I receive a lot. I always talk, listen to your body, listen to your body. And then, I remember we had this conversation at one of your workshops and like, no, it's not about listening to your body. It's about listening to the world through your body. Right. And that like, wow, that kind of opened up so much more, because then I realized, and then you can tap into the guidance of the world. Right. And like you mentioned, like you just said before, the body is actually constantly taking information and experiences, impressions all the time. Everything is stored. We're just not aware of it. Yeah. Right. We just have desensitized from it.
And here's the thing, you cannot consciously know what the body knows. So the body processes 1 billion times more information than we can be consciously aware of. And there's so many studies that have established that. But you can't be consciously aware of it, but you can feel it. You can drop into the body and feel it in its wholeness and feel through its resonance this moment now and what is happening and what is coming. Mm-hmm. And it's another one of those things where feeling in our culture has been denigrated and demeaned and neglected. And, the supreme intellect wants to feel it. It's the all-knowing supervisor. Well, it knows 1 billionth. A billionth of what the body knows.
It overestimates itself.
So just by that little bit, yes. And yet it insists on taking charge of that profound intelligence.
I want to go a bit, talk more about these polarities, which also ties into the dualities of the world, like you just mentioned, which is the male and female aspects of consciousness, right? Which is it's not to be confused with gender, because we all have them within us, regardless of what gender you'd like to identify yourself with. And it also relates to being and doing. So can you describe, because I really, that helped me a lot reading in your book as well, Yourself, New World, what are the male aspects of consciousness? You mentioned some of them already. And what are the female aspects of consciousness?
So in a nutshell, male energy focuses and asserts. Female energy gathers and holds. So the male aspects of our consciousness, and we need both. Just to say, people have misinterpreted my work to say I'm against the intellect.
Yeah, it's not about demonizing the mind.
No, or the male. Where the male pole of our consciousness runs into trouble is when it cuts itself off and asserts itself independent of the female, what comes out of balance. But the male aspect of our consciousness, the strengths are analysis. Well, the word analysis means to pull to pieces. So it attunes to the bits and pieces of the world and their relationships. It yearns to come into known relationship. I know this is a room, and that's a curtain, and that's a door, and I know everything around me. I've got it all named. Of course, there's a presumption to that, and if you know everything, well, then you don't need to feel any of it, which is sort of what happens to us in our culture. The male aspect of our consciousness has as its primary strength gaining perspective. So if you think about the precondition for gaining perspective, you need distance, you need to step back. So by withdrawing from the body, which is our bridge to the world, into the head, we gain perspective. But then we stay there and we gain perspective on everything and gather perspectives and wonder why we feel disconnected. Well, we've moved into a realm that is granting us distance, but it's, we've mistaken that promontory for our home. The female pole our consciousness attunes to wholeness. So it doesn't analyze, it integrates. It yearns to come into felt relationship. So yes, I know that's a curtain behind me, but that intelligence in the pelvic bowl can come into the relationship with that curtain and feel its presence. And anytime that happens, you are in communion. You are not a receptor on a one-way system of gathering information. You are in communion with the living presence of the world around you.
Mm-hmm.
And that shows up in physics, where you cannot observe anything without changing it. You just can't. But it also shows up in etymology, my love of words. So people bandy around the word consciousness and higher consciousness and more consciousness. The word consciousness traces back to a Latin verb that means to be mutually aware.
Mm.
Consciousness is about relationship. It's not about some lighthouse on a rock shining on the world and getting to know it from that isolation. Consciousness is about mutual awareness. So that realm in the pelvic bowl, which I associate with the female side of my consciousness, feels the world and feels it in relationship, feels it in its wholeness, and receives the world. So this wants to look at and assess the world because of the characteristic distance it tends to achieve. Mm-hmm. The intelligence in the female bowl receives the world and knows it as itself. So when you drop down, when you reverse that journey that we've been on up into the head, and you drop the center of your awareness down into the pelvic bowl, you are aware of the world from there, and it's a completely different world. So that's the title of my first book, New Self, New World. As you renew that relationship with that intelligence in the pelvic bowl, then you open your eyes and the world is a different place.
It's like the male needing to surrender to the feminine, I believe, like you said, right? We have it turned around right now. I remember, like you mentioned, is that correct? Like with the tyrant in the head, when we just addicted to the male aspect of consciousness, caught in the head, caught in this, what do you call it? Almost obsession with self-achieved independence.
Very good.
Right. And that's what we all try to be independent financially. I mean, like we just separate ourselves more security, build walls, doors, and all of that. Like, leave me alone. And the feminine aspect, like you said, can only recognize the interrelationship of all that is, and that the truth of reality is that there's only relationship, right? Whatever we're not even talking about just human relationship, but anything you relate to.
Yeah. Right. So I find that funny in our culture. Our obsession as a culture is with organizing. And we organize everything. We organize our emotions. We organize our thinking. We organize our relationships. We organize our spaces. We organize our gardens. There's nothing. We're obsessed with organizing.
I'm laughing because I just moved into a new house with my wife, and I'm trying to get organized. I'm organizing a lot.
If there weren't organization, I wouldn't be able to look up a word in the dictionary.
Exactly.
There's a place for that, right? But what happens is then when we're trying to be present, we are trying to organize ourselves into a state of presence. And that is a dead-end street. There's no such thing. There is only relationship, as you say.
Yeah, you cannot think yourself into the present.
And you cannot organize yourself into the present. You talk about that surrender. Well, the surrender to land in the present is to feel yourself being organized by it. You're being attuned by it. And I don't know anyone who talks about presence in those terms. And I don't know of any other terms that present it accurately.
Interesting. Like, let's go on this word surrender, because I just wrote a new essay. I've had another download, a longer one. It's probably an ebook, 22,000 words blog. But I've gotten, also inspired to work, we are all on a journey, and I'm getting more and have gotten very much influenced lately studying the work of Sri Aurobindo and integral yoga. It's an amazing man. And it's not your typical dogmatic yogic guru if you think of. But he also talks the necessity, I named my blog, the necessity to surrender to the divine and spiritualize the being. And we can talk about divine and God, a bit later as well. But it is essentially the same. The surrender is like to the divine, is to in the present moment, to your true self, to being. But I feel like, I talked about this in my blog as well. The word surrender can be scary for people, or like almost have this, there's also a different definition more in the Eastern spiritual tradition, esoteric tradition, as opposed to the West. Surrender means like defeat, passivity, doing nothing, and just giving up. So what is this deeper surrender? Because the surrender is actually an active force in that sense, right?
Yeah. To me, there is a dance between surrender and security. So you surrender a little bit. I mean, just say to somebody, just surrender. It's like, just fall off the cliff. but to surrender to the breath, for example, so that you're no longer organizing the breath. The body's known how to breathe since you're an infant. And to let that happen, you're coming back just a little bit more to the security of the body. And that security enables a further surrender, which enables a deeper security. And it's like this dance between. And finally, what you're landing at is in the security of your being. And the security of your being does not stop at the skin. Your being includes everything you discover when you're fully present. None of that is, every relationship you feel is part of your being at this moment. Yeah. And so you find the body at rest on the earth. And we cannot be present unless we are at rest on the earth. And meanwhile, our whole culture says up is good and down is bad. Yeah. You're looking up today, right? There's no ambiguity in our culture about what that means. And in another culture, it could mean you're looking a little disconnected and flighty. Are you all right? But no, the upper the better in our culture. And John was looking a little low. And again, we know what that means without ambiguity. Yeah. But in another culture, John was looking a little low could mean John was looking as though he was at rest on the earth and at peace with himself. And we have demonized literally the earth and down, so that we've placed hell there, and we have exalted beyond limitation up, so we place heaven there. And my God, you want to raise your consciousness as high as you can get it. And earth, what's that? I'm okay to leave earth and ascend and transcend.
Yeah.
And so there is no presence.
Exactly.
Without the body being at rest on the earth. And as the body comes to rest on the earth, the body comes to rest in being. And that surrender that takes us there, that dance between security and being, eventually lands us on the earth in the present. And then the guidance is there, and then the surfing forward on the currents that inform you is the game of your life, the play of your life.
Beautiful. So going back to this interrelationship between male and female, being and doing. So the male needs to surrender to the feminine. We need to rest, to come to a surrender to being, to be informed by the world. But that's also then where we make wiser decision from. It's also, you can say it, resting and being connected to our true self, soul, essence, whatever you may want to call it, whatever words you want to define it. But then rest in this being, you get these, you stay in the present, and then the male aspect can engage in doing, right? Or being and doing happens like ideally together, I remember giving this beautiful example of the Zen archer, right? Of targeting the target, and just like the shot, it shot itself. It's like, it's not the archer doing the shot. It's just doing happiness. One, you're fully in flow of the Tao, deeply tuned into to yourself. And then, everything what needs to be done, there's no willful doing anymore. I think you talk about this as well, our obsession with willful doing and forcing things, right? That's when the male aspect, that's what basically what we see in the world, where this pathology has become basically normalized, right? This obsession with doing, and and when you don't do anything, you're lazy. And I remember driving by some gym, there was an advertisement. It says you can rest when you're dead. We're getting all these messages like boom, boom, boom. Or you hear it even like in everyday life, like relating, so what are you doing? How have you been doing? Oh, I'm busy. Oh, good, you're busy. You're like, why is it good to be busy all the time, right? There's something wrong if you're not busy. So we always, I really want to go.
Can I comment just
please,
first a little? So for me, that surrender of the male to the female is more specifically the male surrendering its gifts of perspective to the female. So those gifts are hoarded. We gain an insight, we gain information, and we fill our heads and hoard that information in our heads, and it cannot integrate when it is hoarded in the head. And to me, it's a little like that sort of typical engagement proposal where the man goes down on one knee and offers the ring to the woman or to the partner he loves. So that represents the humility with which the male offers these gifts to the female, and they come down through the body to be integrated. And as they are integrated, they come into their full value. So if the ring isn't accepted, it has no value. You can have 100 rings at home. It gains value as it is received by the female. So our culture believes that knowledge will save us and hoards our knowledge in our heads, and it never integrates. And if it does not integrate, it does not sensitize us to the world. Because when an idea integrates, it newly sensitizes us in some way to the world. And I think sensitivity is the foundation of our intelligence. Sensitivity is necessarily reactive. So it has to be grounded in order to become coherent. A sensitivity that isn't grounded remains incoherent. But if we recognize grounded sensitivity as the true nature of our intelligence, then those gifts come down and resensitize us. And every time we're resensitized to the world, we learn to live a little more intelligently. And right now, we are the cleverest culture that has ever gazed upon the sun. And we have completely forgotten what it is to live intelligently. Mm-hmm. So that exchange of gifts between the male and the female, to me, is the specific nature of that surrender. So it's not that the male gives up its standing or its strength or its power. It's the recognition that those only realize their full potential as they are offered as gifts to the female.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Now that reminds me also of a quote again. I want to just share from your Embodiment manifesto. And it's very significant because it really talks about, the issue about the individual and also in the world, what we're seeing right now, have seen for a while. Ultimately, our head-centric way of being keeps us in a stressful, self-perpetuating loop. Top-down living disrupts wholeness, and lack of wholeness induces anxiety. Anxiety makes us yearn for more control. And more control is promised by top-down management, both within the self and within the society, even as it further disrupts wholeness, right? And it's really interesting because, yeah, you talk about the necessity to get into the body to feel our felt sense. But we live in a world, like you said, from a hunter-gatherer now escaped into the head, and we now live in a world even more technology, right, which is supposed to make things easier. We become more clever, like you said, and it keeps us even more in our heads. Nowadays, even adults, like we were able to live without the smartphone just fine 10 years ago. Now, most of us are just simply addicted. We cannot not look at it and check it every time, right? So, my work, I feel it's done on purpose. There's some conspiracy behind it, to keep us disconnected from our bodies, from our wisdom, because that's, like your quote said, that's how we easier control. Because the more disconnected from our bodies, from our inner wisdom, pelvic floor, making decisions for ourselves, we are up in anxiety in our head. We're looking for then more for answers outside ourselves, right? Of somebody to control us, and this anxiety, almost asks for more control because we feel out of control, so we want more control, right? And then we even more subjected to letting us being controlled by government institutions and all of that.
Yeah, to me, the kernel of that power that is wielded over us is the idea that we are alone. We have been atomized, and we're told, you're basically alone. Make the best of your life. Stand on your own 2 feet. And that's again the tyrant's ideal, self-achieved independence. But there is a domino effect. If you feel that you're alone, if you accept that, and the world feels your heartbeat. Every thought ripples through the universe, just as everything that happens there ripples through you. The aloneness is an untenable fantasy. You are held in the embrace of the present and all it is in every moment. But if you buy into that, if you say, oh yeah, no, I can feel I'm alone. Well, when you're in your head, indeed you do feel alone because you've cut off from the body and all the bridges that it establishes with the world around you. So you assume, you take into your psyche the understanding that you're alone. Well, then your private experience becomes the most important thing, and managing it and supervising it to feel good and become successful becomes your number one job in life, which is why our culture is so self-absorbed, because they are trying to make themselves feel better in the isolation of their skin. They're trying to supervise and manage this experience. Well, what happens with that is we live in a divided state. There is the part of us supervising and the part of us being supervised. And that divided state is self-consciousness. We live in self-consciousness, where one part of the self is conscious of the other part. And the irony is, you can live for 60, 80, 70, whatever decades on this earth, and your primary relationship in life is the relationship between the divided parts of yourself. And meanwhile, there is the felt whole, the present, the living world to come into relationship with. But that's secondary to this obsession with the self. Mm-hmm. And when you are in that divided state, you are susceptible to everything. And our political leaders are as divided as we are, and they are flattering the fears and acquisitiveness that are born in our aloneness. And they know how to manipulate those to retain power and implement policies that will garner more votes and more money, which is their primary concern.
Yeah, hence more laws, more rules.
Absolutely.
All of that, and needing us to be disembodied, to stay in a disembodied state for us to be controlled.
It's the only way we remain susceptible. As long as we are on our heads supervising ourselves, we're going to be looking for supervision and dogma and rules and laws, because we are attuned to that. If we don't go to our own bodies to feel the truth of our lives in this present, then we'll be looking for that truth somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Right. Beautiful. And hence also how we then police each other in the society, right? To supervise each other. Nobody stepping out of line. Oh, hold on. That's
you
really
can't do that.
How a system keeps itself in charge, not even through outside authority, but through ourselves, through our own disembodiment, because anything is a threat. You need to control everything.
And the chatter in the head, the self-judgment, is necessary for supervision. But if you judge yourselves, you will be judging everyone around you. There's no way around it.
Yeah. Beautiful. We're nearing the end of the first hour, and we haven't even touched the surface. So I already know this. We probably will have. We're gonna have a series with you on here to go deeper. But there's so many things we could go. But I just wanted, because the first hour is for the public, I want to also now go back more to a practical approach, because I've done 2 workshops with you, which are very profound. I can highly everybody recommend, and go to philipshepherd.com. You have quite an extensive traveling list. You go literally every part of the world hosting your workshops. And your workshop is beautiful because, you talk a bit, but it's very experiential, right? To give people exercise to really experience that, you know what I mean? That embodiment, that surrender to the feminine, to the pelvic bowl, that's also the gut list. We all know these references. Listen to your gut, where your intuition is. And even physiologically, we know it's actually the second brain. Right? In many ancient cultures, you mentioned it was considered the first brain, not the second brain even, right? Like, this is the most important. That's where you actually, quote unquote, should make your decisions from. The mind is actually the worst place to make decisions from, right? It's more this embodied or And I think it can be very scary, because we've never been, again, going back to society, never taught that, right? Like I said, even education, the mind is worshipped, intellect, memorizing, grading. We learn nothing about emotional intelligence, nothing about body mind, nothing about trusting your intuition. It's almost like discouraged, And then we become insecure. We don't trust this voice anymore, right? This deep, this felt sense, or because we mean, like, hold on, why? The mind was, why do I need to do this? Give me the pro and cons, like da. And I remember for myself, when I dropped out of college at the age of 20, or university in Munich, and then I had this call just to play drums, like, I need to play drums. And it was not from the outside male perspective, it's a completely irrational decision, right? Like, what are you doing? But the call was so strong, the embodied yes. And then, similar to you answer the call, like the hero's journey, then the universe opens up and actually supports you once you surrender. That's the irony. Once you truly surrender, there's full security in the flow of life.
Absolutely.
Right.
And there's this thing, each of us has a unique cluster of gifts, and the world is calling for those to be put into service. And it's calling with the readiness to support that. Right? And we forget that part. We forget about the support. Yeah. And you don't even, as you say, you don't even discover it until you've answered it and stepped into the unknown. Yeah.
Beautiful. So, again, people can reach you at your website, philipshepherd.com. Is that correct? Yeah. It will be linked in all the info section. And again, I highly recommend to participate in one of Philip's workshops. And your work, we haven't talked in a couple of years because we've been on our own journeys, right? But your work has quite developed. You also have teacher trainings, right? For your work, you have developed, that's what I just saw on you, the embodiment present process, like really the whole modality around it. And you having, running facilitator trainings as well. Do you want to share a little bit about your work?
Yeah, I'd love to. And it's technically the embodied present process.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that name is trying to point to is that the present lives within you. It's when you embody the present that you come home to yourself. It's not that the present is out there and I'm embodied here. It's, the present is out there and it's within. And the facilitators trainings are currently the joy of my life. I'm about to start the 8th one next week. And we have 3 5-day retreats over the course of a year where we train and hang out and eat and talk and get into it. And between those, we have weekly Zoom calls. And the premise of the whole year, like there are some people who see themselves facilitating the work, and there are some people who just take the training because it complements a modality they already practice. And there's some people who are just doing it for their own personal reasons. But the premise of the training is that, well, you can't facilitate the training if you're not living the work. And so the whole year is how to achieve that surrender, how to come home to the body, to the earth, to the present, to that attunement that allows your life to feel the guidance that is calling it forward. Mm-hmm. And there, it quickly turns into family and the joy of sharing and feeling this stuff together. And it feels like a little incubator where the whole of our culture is pulling us in another direction. And there is this support for ourselves, for each other, held within this year-long training. I love every bit of it.
Beautiful. Yeah, and on that, I also want to remember some, I've practiced your some of your practices and techniques for a while, and also, like I told you, I implemented some of them in the retreat I'm hosting in Peru. And like my wife Laura and I, we teach some of them, especially the one of the most the one exercise that people love the most is the elevator shaft exercise, because especially at the beginning, when you just be in your head, like just be normal, and you gaze into each other's eyes, like socially you do. It's like, okay, here you are. And then you do the elevator shaft exercise, which is, in a nutshell, you imagine the ball of light in your cranium, and you travel down into the pelvic floor, right, until it rests in your pelvic being, and really feel that. And then you open your eyes again and look in the other person's eyes while he or she has done the same exercise, and you're like, oh my God, you connect on a holistic level. It's like truly the meaning to see the divine in, you see yourself in another person, or see God in the other person, and you have this deep, intimate connection. That is also the foundation of true compassion and empathy, what we truly need in this day and age, right? This interrelationship, right? I am you, you are me. So these simple, what I like about your work, these seem to be simple exercises, but they're very, very powerful. Yeah. So again, I can highly recommend. I think you have also some of these exercises as audio recordings on your website,
I've got a set of 8 audio exercises on my website, and I'm also developing a course based on my work that is going to be on another website, TEP, T-E-P-P, tep.life. Mm-hmm. And that's just getting underway, and I'm excited about that, because I've, on the Zoom calls and the facilitators training, every week I do a new exercise. So I've developed over 100 practices, mm-hmm. Just different ways of coming at it, different ways to support it. So it's a real pleasure to be developing that forum in which those practices can be shared.
Beautiful. And before we take a break, because you have 2 books out, New Self, New World, and then Radical Wholeness, which is more of a condensed version for people who have never, it's your version cannot be condensed. I know. Your writing is beautiful. I mean, I feel both people should. I cannot should people, but I recommend both books. But for anybody who has not come across your work, which book do you suggest to maybe get?
Radical Wholeness.
Radical Wholeness.
Radical Wholeness is shorter, and on New Self, New World, I cut my sensitivities loose and allowed the language to follow that. And the journey of radical wholeness is made with simpler language. And I love the challenge of allowing the language to be simpler without sacrificing the clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And the books have very little overlap. Radical wholeness looks at just one thing, which is that our culture has basically desensitized us to wholeness, and how that happens and what the implications for that are in our life and what we can do about it. And New Self, New World is an overarching view of our history and the patterns within that in relationship to the body.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Philip. So again, anybody who wants to listen to the second hour, please sign up to the membership at my website, veilofreality.com, if you have not already done so. It also gives you access to the forum where we can discuss these topics and many, many other topics as well at the membership forum. And in the second hour, I want to talk to like some topics. I want to also address with you, big topic of trauma and wounding, and how that relates to the embodiment process, or can be difficult for some people who have been dealing with severe trauma and wounding. I'm sure you've experienced in your work as well, individuals who have been traumatized. And about talking about trauma stored in the body, I want to talk about embodiment and also the dawning of transhumanism. I know you made some references to that, which is the ultimate disembodied state of being, man merging with machine and all of that. And, also like touch upon a bit deeper on the hero's journey, the archetype of the hero's journey and how that relates to the process of the embodiment. But thank you, Philip.
Sounds like about 6 hours or so.
Exactly. That's just my intention. But yeah, definitely go a bit deeper in this second hour, and we'll see you there. Thank you, Philip.
Yeah, thank you, Bernhard.